Hi, everyone. This is Dylan Teggart. I'm here with my next HR Tech Chat. Today, I am joined by the great Lucia Valerio. She is an HR leader with 20 years of experience. She focuses on HR strategy, driving organizational growth, and engaging employees through transformative HR strategies. Right now, she's the head of HR at Lexar International. And Lucia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dylan. It's a pleasure to be here and have a great, having a great chat with you and talk about some of our HR topics.
Yeah, thank you. And if you don't mind, do you mind telling people a little bit about yourself so they get acquainted with you and your experience?
Sure. Long career in HR, really focused, excuse me, on over 20 years of experience in technology companies, also in startups, really, in focused on organizational growth and optimizing HR strategies. Really, I love to drive people-centered initiatives and implementing, effective HR business strategies, always looking towards, being part of the business, but also driving the business forward and really looking at results that are going to improve company and business performance. And throughout my career, held many different roles and positions, and currently excited about my role with Lexar International as the head of HR there, as that company continues to grow and be a leader in the technology space.
Nice. And for people who don't know, Lucia and I have talked before, so if it seems like I'm diving into some things I already know about her, that's a little bit why. And that's because I want to set up my first question, which is in a conversation Lucia and I had before, she talked about going back to the basics. And one of the main principles behind the actions you take in an HR role and mission statements is going back to the basics. So what does that kind of look
Right.
like for you? And what are the most essential basics, if we want to put it that way? And is there something people tend to miss when they're trying to keep it simple and they just aren't getting it right?
Right. Yeah, it's a definitely, from a personal perspective, really the principles of going back to basics in HR really is the alignment with the future of HR and organizational effectiveness across all of the functions within the space of HR and the business. For me, really, it means prioritizing fundamental HR principles like, fairness, equity, transparency, open communication, communication across all levels in the organization, and of course, employee engagement. And as we know, today's culture and across all businesses is consistently changing. Also, what I believe are some of the clear principles around and clear policies, which mean we need a consistency across some of our processes, but continually changing as the landscape in the business changes. Another area I look and focus on is continuous learning, both personal and allowing, the business and the employees to have that capability or that chance to do those that continuous learning and learning initiatives, and really find those to be the essential basics to contribute to a very positive work culture and focus on organizational success. So those are kind of, a generalized area that I focus on when I look to being back at, the base level. So much change is happening, but I tend also to lose sight because it's just, let's get things done, execute, yet trying to get a holistic view of both internal culture and external, what's happening outside in the world, allows us to be able to address and talk about, the ever-changing landscape in business and in companies.
So when you think of, some of those things you said, like the cultures can, the culture inside and outside of the workplace is consistently changing. So kind of having certain things that remain steady. And I'm assuming those certain things are like payroll, someone having someone to talk to,
Right.
communication. Um, I guess in your experience, has there been, in these periods of change, what normally suffers the most within an organization? Like what do people quickly kind of lose sight of, but they shouldn't, and that they should, kind of keep their eyes on the ball for?
I think getting that feedback. But lots of companies, I've done tons of surveys across many of the organizations I've worked for, and trying to address as many of these elements sometimes becomes a challenge in terms of the feedback we get. But I think it's really prioritizing based on where the company is moving towards, what our commitments, our goals, our values are, and continuously spearheading areas that will ensure, like I mentioned, some of those key areas, consistent processes, allowing having continuous learning, engagement of employees, really looking at how the landscape is evolving and it's almost trying to forecast where we're going to evolve in our organizations, to ensure that we can't take a point in time. We'll consistently have to adapt as an HR team or as an HR leader to try and foresee how and where things are headed, so that we internally in HR can be that business. And it's more than just a business partner to leadership and to the business, but it's also sitting side by side, almost like holding hands as we are going through the journey, and maintaining that looking at things like data driven, inclusivity. um, all of these key challenges are going to continuously be there. It's just a question of how we, and how HR would be that front runner. And in today's world, HR is the front runner, must be the front runner across the organization.
And when you're kind of looking for those changes that are happening outside of work, and but also and also trying to understand the world of work and the world at work, especially with new generations, I'm assuming part of that occurs through just you conversing with people and kind of picking their brain about like how they're feeling. But outside of that, are there certain places you look to maybe catch some of the more overarching trends that occur, that are maybe not just coming in from the individual level, but are bigger trends within HR or within the workforce culture, nationally or globally? How do you kind of keep pace with that?
Learning is consistent. You've got to be, I am consistent in terms of the learning and being as up to date as you possibly can. But the amount of information, as we know, throughout many years, just there's so much out there to be able to choose from and to learn from. And I think being at the forefront, I always feel like I'm still trying to learn the newest technology in HR, their newest change in D&I, or what are some of the key areas in employee well-being. I think staying connected with industry peers, with experts, using whatever tools are at disposal, that are so many out there anyways, and really understanding what are areas that are most going to cause, have the most impact. New generations that are entering the workforce have so many different expectations, so we have to understand and learn what are these, what drives a new generation. And that's not going to stop. It'll continue to move on every generation, or every time, every process that we move forward. And then understanding there are different expectations, are different values, basically requires everyone to adapt. And it's an adaptation strategy, not only HR strategy adapting, but personal strategy adapting to, what are, your basic, people's basic values. And it's hard to say, and put everything in a small little box and say, this is, these are the values change, people change, and basically requires everyone to adapt. And I think ensuring that there's alignment with evolving workforce dynamics, and it is one of the key words is this dynamic that we see consistently moving forward, and understanding that there's so much out there in terms of learning tools, seminars, you can all of the capabilities, but being able to pick and choose is becoming, I think, has become a lot more difficult. But having a focus, like wanting to be more data driven or inclusivity, and it's that focus at that point in time, and ensuring that we were able to meet the needs, using learning capabilities, within both personal and within the companies I work with.
And what are some of the things you've learned so far, that have really kind of changed your perspective and kind of helped you feed into that adaptation strategy, which I think is a good way to put it. And like,
Right.
what are some of the things you've learned, and have there been any surprises that you've kind of uncovered, I guess you could say, during your time working, where you thought maybe things were going to be this way when you got into it, and then this is the reality of it, or this is how
Right.
people,
Right.
or human nature maybe was a little different than you expected, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. It's a good way to look at it. And it's the, what I look at it, it's really the shifts and the capability to have an agile mindset. And agile is an old word, and I'm sure there's probably newer ways to say that, because it goes back to the basics of kind of the first question being, how do we, from my perspective, it's really, um, having that openness to understand that it's different. It'll be different. There's shifts. There's adopting in a different way. Different trends that are happening. Different employee expectations. So what I've learned is to kind of say, okay, you're going into one specific, we can call it, challenge in a corporation with preset ideas. This is how I did it in the past. But I think really staying mindful that there are new ways, there are possible different things to adapt. And sometimes it is difficult because, oh, this has worked in the past, will it work again? And maybe it will, but it's always, for me, it's been keeping that vision, of openness, or that capability to say, I want to have an open mind to be able to understand and take, like we just spoke about, different learnings, different areas where, we're able to, know that, this type of technology is going to present new, different, solutions for a company and different challenges. Understanding, that this flexibility that individual HR leaders have to use within their strategy, that flexibility of work, things will change, and it is challenging. Personally, you've got to always be thinking and trying and balancing act within the scope of HR, but also it's a business. It's the nature of business that we want to do the best we can, both individually, personally, but as a business leader, we want to ensure that we're addressing and bringing the company, making the company successful, and adapting to those change globally. We rarely now talk about locally. We're always talking globally because, and we've been doing that for a long time. because that's the mindset. We want to attract, for example, candidates, global candidates. The businesses are global, so that shifting the mindsets is a challenge, but it's also exciting for me personally, because it just, it opens my eyes every day to something new, something different, different ways of learning also, and understanding how HR has such a big impact, and continues to have a big impact and bigger impact, because everything is revolving around work culture, and adopting different trends, but also evaluating before we jump in. And sometimes we tend to not evaluate, or evaluate not enough. There's not enough evaluation on what we want to do, but we sometimes have no choice to just jump in and get things going, in terms of solutions, or working, getting those challenges behind us, and moving forward.
Interesting. And speaking of kind of like finding solutions and challenges, I often hear from people, this is how we're going to outsource this or that service, because it'll get it off our plate, or we just can't handle it. But I feel like for someone like you who has the experience you have, what if someone wanted to do the reverse, and instead of outsourcing, you're using something like a PEO or like a different service provider? Let's say you wanted to bring it in-house, like you wanted to bring some HR services in-house, be it payroll or just basic HR, let's say.
Right.
How would you recommend someone goes about doing that, and what are the kind of the main pillars to setting that up with it, within an organization?
Right. A great question. And of course, it all depends. There's so many, and you mentioned pillars. There's so many areas within, both internally to HR and externally across the business. Looking at it specifically from the question is really, is it sustainable? Will it provide, the business, the company, with the services we need to provide, and the strategy capabilities for our workforce, and also across our clients, our customers? Those, we're thinking about this for a reason. Is there a challenge? Are we lacking, in terms of HR capabilities when we're, using a PO, or vice versa? When we want to, have a strategy around, maybe, reducing costs, and, a PO would be less costly, or vice versa, however we want to look at that. But there are definitely areas where, I've had experience, and just, ensuring we're doing this analysis around what does it look like, what is the picture, and what are the causes that are getting us to think this way, first of all, and then, how do we want to execute? It's I call it basic project management, if I can call it that way. We're looking at our scope, we're looking at our problem. Can we do this? And are we able to do it successfully? Be it, bringing in HR back into the company versus outsourcing it, or outsourcing even tools or technology. A lot of, I think, in today's, from what I'm understanding, in today's, kind of workforce world, we're trying to, offload, if I can use that word, and say, we can do this cheaper externally, or we can have this service or use this tool, and it's also a question of integration, and how is it seamless at the end of the day? I believe how is it seamless for the business, for our employees, and for HR as a whole, in terms of, where we're going to see ourselves in a few years from now. Is having bringing in the HR, pillars and functions back into the company, is that, are we planning to, what are our tangible results for the future? And it's hard to predict the future, but that's what we're kind of here to do, is strategize what we want to do. We want to do improve costs, we want to have, better maybe ROIs, cost savings, or, ensuring that we're improving productivity, both, from an employee and business perspective. What are, how are our, our competitive advantage in terms of, our employees and our business? What is this impact? So it has to, from my perspective, making such big shifts, require a tremendous amount of study analysis. And, sometimes we think, oh, it's, the business moves so fast that, it's like analysis paralysis, but we still have to do that. We still, and it comes really also back to the basics. We tend to, sometimes I've seen it in myself, and I have to pull back and say, hey, hold on, we haven't thought about this. Can we, let's do this. And it also, there's they continuing to try it out, and if we are successful, we will make it successful, and we will be successful. I think that's really looking at our alignment and ensuring that we're focused on, employee productivity, employee satisfaction. How are we, looking at our competitive advantage as a company, and around the employee strategies that we design when we're doing, when we're making decisions around, be it, bringing our HR function in-house, and, or, putting, I would call it, bringing it a bit outside of our organization. And it all of it is based on what companies have an appetite for and have capabilities. And a lot of it is also based off of, how we transform. It's a transformation, for, and a vision of what this transformation is going to look like.
Interesting. And yeah, that analysis, the analysis part, I feel like, and I know, yeah, you can get in the weeds a little bit, like, what'd you call it? Analysis paralysis.
Right.
But I think oftentimes, especially today with how much new technology comes out, there's always that like kind of like shiny new object thing that happens where
Exactly.
people are just like, gotta go get it. You know what I mean? But I think it's
Right.
important, like you said, to step back. And I think that's something that really does come with experience, is the ability to see this exciting thing, pause, and then look at it
Exactly.
analytically and just be like, okay, this is actually what it really does. Let's be honest
Right.
here. And while it is marketed well, maybe this is
Right.
the reality of how
And
it's going to
yeah,
impact us.
I agree totally. And I love the word pause. It doesn't mean no, we're not going to do it. It could mean pause now and let's think about it. Maybe it's not for the moment. And I've always used that. I said, let's just pause for a second. Maybe we're not ready for this tool, or we, whatever, or this strategy, or but we will be in the future. Or it seems like there's a consistent rush to, and implement this or this new tool or this technology or this type of strategy. And I find that if we pause and understand the impacts on our company, work culture, and how it will align with the workplace, with the business, how we're going to transform, I think there's some key basics. And with that in mind, and sometimes it is the light bulb goes off, and yes, this is what we need to have this tool, this training. We can use so many different aspects because it's a need, and it works out and it's successful. That's great, but it's always, it's not a moment in time. It's going to evolve. So we always have, in my mind, it's always, okay, how's it going to change? We've got this new tool. How is it going to change? This new learning, LMS, whatever we want to call it, but how is it going to change and allow us to change and transform? And I think streamlining, continues, these, all of our great buzzwords like streamlining, data centric, having, capabilities, those will never change, but it's just how they adapt to the day to day that's happening in the way we work and our work cultures and our workforce dynamics. to me, that's important. But it's okay to pause sometimes, and I know sometimes becomes frustrating from both an HR or business and employee perspective. But it's okay to pause, to kind of rethink, realign. And sometimes it's great. And like we're all just gung ho and going forward because it just needs to happen. And that's what makes that's for me the exciting part of human resources, of being part of a leader in HR, is really to look and have this open perspective, but also to understand, the business, the business needs to function, the business needs to run. We have clients, we have customers, we have employees, and everything has to, it's a global, internal global element and function that we need to understand. And it's a challenge, but it's exciting. It's fun to be able to, and I use the word fun because you never stop. There's this constant, okay, what's going to happen here? How does this work? What data analysis are we going to do with this data? What are going to be the employee experiences? And that's, allows me also to be mindful of how to improve and keep HR at the forefront of any business that I've been working with.
And speaking of kind of new technologies on the forefront, obviously everyone seems to be talking about AI, artificial intelligence, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like that's me personally. I do feel like that's one of those things where we need to pause and like take a look at what it's really doing,
Right.
because you could add AI to anything and people get excited. But for you with AI, what kind of metrics are you looking for that technology specifically? And do you think it'll actually make, I'm sure down the line it could make a tremendous difference, but today,
Right.
like in 2024, what impacts do you really expect? And do you see any significant shifts in work culture occurring because of it, or are we still quite a ways away from that?
Well, yeah, AI is everywhere, and it's so it's an amazing change and change that's happening within the work, the world of work. And merely my approach to evaluating AI impacts on work culture is really aligning with the workplace and business transformation. We continuously want to transform, be better, do better, um, you know have better results, be more attentive to our customers, make have an impact on the bottom line. And I anticipate AI streamlining HR processes. That, I mean, and I think over the years of AI coming, even before all there were ways to streamline HR processes. And I think improving data analysis, those are areas that AI is impacting, and really it's to help make better decisions, and at the bottom line, enhancing employee experience and ensuring that we're, our end result, our customers, our business is at the best of and the peak of its existence, if I can put it in that way. I do recognize, however, there is a need for responsible AI, in the sense of, just like you said, it's the newest thing, everybody's rushing towards it. Let's pause, take a minute, step back. Do we all really need all of this? Is it, what do we pick and choose? And having that vision, that, knowledge to be able to pick and choose. And it comes back to the previous question, how do you keep up to date with, what's coming out? And it's so difficult. But I think it's, you center and say, okay, I want to improve this aspect, or I need to, there's a challenge that we're being presented in this area, or this pillar of HR or employee, engagement, or, in the company. So it's that whole analysis. and really, responsible AI is implementation. We address the potential concerns about different elements that AI, everybody says, well, we'll have job displacement, or, things are going to change in our work culture. So I think, again, that comes back to the fact that, it's change. We have to look at it sometimes with broad scope lenses and sometimes through a microscope and ensure that we have a balanced approach to leveraging the technology, all technologies in AR, in HR, and really, being able to stay mindful that things, the adapting to AI and its impact is key, to making choices of how a company and how HR is impacted by the, can we call it a revolution? I'm not sure, but at least, evaluating what it means and how it's being used in the specific organization that we're in.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that all ties kind of into the greater arc of the way you kind of look at things, which is,
Right.
I think it's measured, but it's curious, I guess you could say, the way it kind of comes off, which is always good. I think, you don't want to be entrenched in a mindset, but also you want to have some basics, I guess, essentially, or some pillars of the way you do things, but also being curious. So I think it's kind of vital to take that approach, especially as
Right.
I think you gain more experience.
Right. And it plays a significant role in HR. We have to, like, I think from my perspective also, it's really, it's going to touch, and it's been touching areas in terms of recruitment, performance management. I mean, workforce planning, metrics, analytics. Really, we have to look at how we leverage any of these tools that are out there, as a form. For me, it's a form of automation. It's a form of, what are some of the repetitive things, the tasks and items that we can, I'm, for sure, that's what I want to do. I don't want to spend time doing certain things that I can get, a tool to help me do, data analysis, yet when you look at the decision making process, these are, again, tools to help assist for to make these strategic decisions across the organization, and ensuring that we still keep what I call the personalization of our employee experiences. And I do anticipate AI, really, it is enhancing HR efficiency and effectiveness, yet requiring us to continue to evaluate and adapt, to ensure we're responsible, we use it ethically. There's many areas. AI is just a huge bubble, continuous, that really focuses on bigger, better, and I think with everything that we're hearing, it is, and I'm a big adoption of AI and tech. I've implemented many technologies in HR in different scopes and roles in my career, and without that, I don't think I don't think HR would have advanced to where we are today in such a I call avant-garde type role within an organization, in terms of strategy and implementation of policies across the spectrum of HR and across the business.
I think that's a good place to leave it. I want to thank you so much for chatting with me today, and
It was great.
yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And if anyone is looking to find you or reach out, I know you do have a LinkedIn. Would people be Is it possible for people to
Right.
reach out to you there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn. I love to collaborate, learn, read about, different areas that are growing in the scope of HR and across the business, of course. How work culture is shifting and consistently, driven by different, adopting AI, working remote work, basically, employee engagement. I think, collaborating with different mindsets is key to continue to understand and know what's coming in the future. We can't predict things, but we can learn from our past and continue to build for the future and for future generations. As HR, we become mindful um, of how we're growing in the realm of human resources.
Well, we'll leave it there, and thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Dylan. It's been a pleasure.